In the 1980s, with Deng Xiaoping's call for peaceful reunification and one country, two systems policy, relations between mainland China and Taiwan began to thaw. In 1987, then-leader Chiang Ching-kuo lifted Taiwan's martial law and allowed citizens to visit mainland China to reunite with family. After decades of separation, families were finally reconnecting. The travel policy was so lenient that many Taiwanese used it as an opportunity for sightseeing. Tourism and commerce between the two sides began to flourish, ushering in what many called a honeymoon phase in cross-strait relations. Taipei writer Guan Renjian wrote on his blog, "To be honest, the kindness shown by the mainland to Taiwanese tourists deeply moved us. So when a tragic event later caused travelers from all over the world to hesitate, Taiwanese were still visiting the mainland. But in 1994, this fragile trust was violently shattered. 24 Taiwanese tourists were brutally murdered on a sightseeing boat in China's Thousand Island Lake. To this day, many believe it wasn't just a criminal case, but a political disaster." On March 31, 1994, the Hairu pleasure boat departed from Chengdu Port in Shexian County, Anhui Province. Its destination was the scenic Thousand Island Lake in Zhejiang Province. On board were 24 tourists from Taiwan's Changfeng Travel Agency. 6 crew members, 2 Chinese tour guides. The plan was to dock at Mao Juyuan Wharf in Chang'an County later that evening, but the boat never arrived. Worried, the local tour company sent out search boats. The Thousand Island Lake, a man-made reservoir formed by damming the Shinan River, is massive, with 1,078 islands dotting its surface. It's a major tourist attraction. The tourists had entered China through Guangzhou and visited Chengdu, Chongqing, the Three Gorges, and Wuhan. After visiting Thousand Island Lake, they were to return to Taiwan via Hong Kong on April 2nd, but now they were missing. At dawn on April 1st, searchers discovered the Hairu burning fiercely in the Huangniling deep water zone of the lake. Firefighters managed to extinguish the blaze, but found no one on board. All 32 people had vanished. The boat was towed ashore for investigation. The incident triggered a large-scale search by the Zhejiang government, deploying 20 boats and over 1,000 personnel. Helicopters scanned the islands. Locals were asked for tips. 2 possibilities emerged. Passengers jumped into the lake to escape the fire. They fled to nearby islands. But the fire-damaged lifeboats and life jackets remained untouched, suggesting neither occurred. The horrifying truth: the Hairu had 3 levels, 2 passenger decks and a cramped bottom cabin under 1.5 meters high, used by the crew and for diesel storage. That evening, as the boat cooled, forensic technician Cheng Jianbo from the Hangzhou Public Security Bureau investigated the water-filled bottom cabin. The stench hinted at death. By 11 p.m., renowned forensic expert Ji Shangon and his team arrived. As water was drained, the truth surfaced. All 32 people, tourists, crew, and guides were crammed into the bottom cabin, charred beyond recognition. Women were found in the inner parts of the cabin, men on the outer edges as if shielding them. Some were kneeling, others lying down, burned severely. Why had they all gone down into a sealed, deadly trap? Suspicion. Why did no one try to escape? Why was the escape ladder to the bottom cabin missing? Why had no life-saving equipment been used? Then came another chilling detail. Many victims had hidden valuables in their shoes, underwear, or coat sleeves. Yet other valuables like watches and cameras were missing entirely. The ladder, over 80 pounds, had disappeared. Fire couldn't have destroyed it. It was likely removed. Also found, a gasoline can in a diesel-only engine room. The signs pointed to robbery and arson. The forensic evidence, autopsies, revealed all victims died from carbon monoxide poisoning and heat-induced asphyxiation. Their lungs, throats, and even stomachs contained soot, meaning they were alive when the fire started. They died around 8 p.m. on March 31st, shortly after their last meal. But Taiwan families were outraged. The autopsies had been performed without consent. When the first Taiwanese delegation arrived on April 3rd, they were denied access to the boat and barred from taking photos. On April 4th, dozens of grieving relatives arrived. Upon seeing the bodies had already been dissected, their anguish erupted. They rejected the accidental fire explanation. Many believed foul play was involved. Despite mounting evidence, Zhejiang authorities continued calling the event an accident and strictly controlled news coverage. The international media and Taiwanese press grew suspicious. A Taiwanese journalist, Wang Bochuan, even disguised himself as a grieving family member to sneak into the morgue and gather evidence. He and others reported being shadowed by officials. Local authorities brought in Fujianese officials to eavesdrop on conversations in Minnan dialect. Families requested to repatriate the bodies, but authorities insisted on cremation. Only after weeks of delays and pressure did they allow the families to take the ashes home. Each victim's family received a payout of 135,000 yuan, a historic amount for mainland China at the time, but cold comfort for the bereaved. Public outrage and backlash. On April 5th Qingming Festival, local monks and Catholic priests held services for the dead. Ashes were returned to Taiwan by April 9th, but the damage was done. Taiwanese media held emergency press conferences. On April 12th, Taiwan's Mainland Affairs Council announced the suspension of cultural and tourism exchanges with the mainland. Polls showed self-identified Taiwanese rose from 29% to 36.9%. Self-identified Chinese dropped from 24% to 12.7%. Pro-independence views grew, pro-unification views shrank. The Thousand Island Lake tragedy had turned political. On April 4th, journalist Wan Runlong wrote an internal report criticizing the news blackout. It caught the attention of top leadership, including then-President Jiang Zemin. On April 6th, China's top forensic expert Chen Shixian was dispatched to the scene. Chen reviewed the autopsy reports and crime scene photos. He noticed signs of struggle, including a unique Cole's fracture on one female victim's arm. This injury is caused by falling onto an outstretched hand, suggesting victims were pushed or rushed into the bottom cabin in panic. He theorized the criminals were few in number. They used guns or other weapons to threaten the passengers. Victims didn't expect to be killed, so they hid valuables. Once confined below, the attackers set the boat on fire. Chen believed the attackers used a fast, inconspicuous vehicle like a speedboat and were likely local. The site was remote but along common tourist routes, perfect for ambush. Police launched a county-wide manhunt, investigating 6,000 boats and interviewing over 100,000 locals. Then came a break. An officer heard a villager complain that a friend had borrowed his hunting rifle and returned it with a mismatched bolt. In 1994, civilian gun ownership still existed, especially for hunters. From this clue, they traced the suspect. The killers caught. The main perpetrator was Willie Hong, 22, from Chunnan County. He had recently bought a speedboat with a loan he couldn't repay. He roped into idle acquaintances. Yu Aijian, 23, Hu Jihan, 24. Together, they planned a robbery. On March 31st, they armed themselves with 2 hunting rifles, 14 bullets, 6 kilograms of dynamite, 6 detonators, 2 meters of fuse, a hatchet, and 3 cans of gasoline. They waited near Hudao Island. At 5:30 p.m., they spotted the Hairui and boarded it near Azidao. Wu Anju, masked and armed with guns, took control. Hu wielded the hatchet, slamming it into a table to terrorize the tourists. They robbed the passengers and forced them into the bottom cabin. Then they removed and discarded the escape ladder, transferred the loot into their speedboat, attempted to flood the cabin using the boat's fire hose. It failed. Threw in dynamite, ignored the passengers' pleas, poured gasoline into the cabin, set the boat ablaze, fled. They later divided their loot over $5,000 USD, 150,000 New Taiwan dollars, RMB 3,000, and numerous valuables. The evidence was overwhelming. The gasoline can found on the boat matched the one Wu hadn't returned. Bullet residue on the boat matched the borrowed rifles. On April 15th to 16th, all 3 suspects were arrested and confessed. On June 12th, the Hangzhou Intermediate People's Court sentenced all 3 to death. They were executed a week later. Premier Li Peng called for harsh punishment. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs urged continued cross-strait cooperation, but for many in Taiwan, trust was already broken. Following the massacre, cross-strait exchanges were suspended for months. Though eventually resumed, the warmth never fully returned. The incident became a turning point in public opinion, shifting Taiwanese identity away from Chinese heritage and toward independence. In 1998, when another Taiwanese citizen was murdered in Liaoning, Chinese authorities allowed full transparency, clearly learning from the Thousand Island Lake tragedy. But back in 1994, when 3 greedy young men boarded the Hairu with guns and a lighter, they destroyed not just 32 lives but an entire era of hope. Thank you for being with us today. See you next time.